I believe the beginning of the slope will happen in 2027. I mean, we will see signs in 26. We've seen signs in 24, but we will see escalating signs next year, and then a clear slip in 27.
Why?
The geopolitical environment of our world is not very positive. I mean, you really have to think deeply about not the symptoms, but the reasons why we are living the world that we live in today is money, right? And money, for anyone who really knows money, money's, you and I are peasants. You know, we build businesses, we contribute to the world, we make things, we sell things, and so on. Real money is not made there at all. Real money is made in lending, in fractional reserve, right? And you know, the biggest lender in the world would want reasons to lend, and those reasons are never as big as war. I mean, think about it, huh? The world spent $2.71 trillion on war in 2024, right? $1 trillion a year in the US. And when you really think deeply, I don't mean to be scary here. You know, weapons have depreciation. They depreciate over 10 to 30 years, most weapons.
They lose their value.
They lose their value and they depreciate in accounting terms on the books of an army. The current arsenal of the US, that's a result of a deep search with my AI, Trixie. You know, the current arsenal, I think, we think cost the US $24 to $26 trillion to build. My conclusion is that a lot of the wars that are happening around the world today are a means to get rid of those weapons so that you can replace them. And, you know, when your morality as an industry is, we're building weapons to kill, then, you know, you might as well use the weapons to kill.
Who benefits?
The lenders and the industry.
But they can't make the decision to go to war. They have to rely on Donald Trump.
Remember, I said that to you when I think on our third podcast. War is decided first, then the story is manufactured. You remember 1984 and the Orwellian approach of, like, you know, freedom is slavery and war is peace, and they call it something speak. Basically, to convince people that going to war in another country to kill 4.7 million people is freedom. You know, we're going there to free the Iraqi people. Is war ever freedom? You know?
In the late 1980s and early 1990s, Los Angeles wasn't just a backdrop for gun violence. It was the front line. South Central, Compton, even Watts, these neighborhoods became battlegrounds where blood was spilled daily over turf, dope, and pride. But somewhere along the line, the shootouts began to sound different. They sound louder, deadlier, more destructive. That's when people started asking, how the hell are these dudes getting weapons like that? Now, what the LAPD and the public slowly began to realize was this: military-grade weapons had hit the streets. And when that happened, everything changed.
This is Psalms chapter 73 and verse 6. Therefore pride compasseth them about as a chain. Violence covereth them as a garment. I want to start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakah Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who are the elders of Yasher Allah, and a sincere salutation to all you Akim, who are preaching this word and believing this word, and to the Akwath, who are believing this word, in all truth and in sincerity. I want to go into a lesson based on the clip, or the clips that you just saw, of basically, you know, the scheme of Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, of profiting off of war and profiting off of death. All right, and this is why you see so much wickedness and warfare in the earth, because behind closed doors, all major wars are banker wars. These wars don't just happen out of thin air. The weapons don't just appear out of nowhere. There's a business model behind it. All right. And the scriptures talk about violence covering him as a garment. Now, when you deal with this word covereth. All right. It's atop, Salakia, atop. And it says to turn aside. Here's the point in verse 2, to envelope oneself. All right. So they've enveloped themselves in wickedness. When you go into envelop, it says wrap up, cover, or surround completely. All right. And when our people think of the violent man, they think of an average so-called white man with a pickup truck and a rifle or a shotgun, in the window. When really you zoom out, this is organized violence and organized wickedness on a scale that most people can't comprehend. And this is what the Lord talks about concerning wickedness in high places, about not wrestling with flesh and blood, but wickedness in high places, because this is a global phenomenon. And the Lord called this out before it actually played itself out, all right, in our lifetime. All right, and I want to get this as a point. All right, let's go here before I go to that. This is 2nd Esdras, chapter 6, and verse 9 in the GNT. All right, and it reads, Esau represents the end of this age, and Jacob represents the beginning of the new age. All right, and when you deal with Esau, all right, he's described as a man who had to live by the sword. All right, so everything you see is a result of who's in rulership. As a matter of fact, before I go to this, there's Ecclesiastes chapter 10 and verse 1. A wise judge will instruct his people, and the government of a prudent man is well ordered. As the judge of the people is himself, so are his officers. And what manner of man the ruler of the city is, such are all they that dwell therein. All right. And when you go to what was given unto Esau concerning the blessing, if you will, he was given a temporary blessing of rulership, but he would have to live by the sword. All right. This is Genesis chapter 27 and 38. And it reads, And Esau said unto his father, Hast thou but one blessing, my father? Bless me, even me also, O my father. And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. And Isaac his father answered and said unto him, Behold, thy dwelling shall be the fatness of the earth, and of the dew of heaven from above. And by thy sword shalt thou live, and shalt serve thy brother. And it shall come to pass, when thou shalt have the dominion, that thou shalt break his yoke from off thy neck. All right, so we see that he would have a dominion or a rulership, but he would have to maintain it through violence. And this is what you see happening on a global scale, whether they're the ones who are physically enacting the violence or they're supporting it through resources. Because you have a thing now called proxy wars, where they may not put boots on the ground, but they'll supply that nation with the weapons and sometimes even the logistics to fight that war. Now, what this ex-Google exec pointed out was that behind the scenes, this is how money is made. All right. And when you think about this article that I want to pull up that Isaiah has sent me. All right, let me go back to it, Lord willing. It points out a very important point, because when you deal with the conflict in Ukraine, that was a way for Babylon the Great, which is America, to get rid of its old weapons and to make money off of it, because they didn't give those weapons to Ukraine. When they talk about billions of dollars going to Ukraine, it really went to the defense contractors and the politicians who pushed the policy through, because they didn't literally give them a check. They gave them weapons. Where did the weapons come from? They came from the defense contracts in Babylon the Great, which is America. So when they were funding this war with Ukraine, they were really getting rid of their weapons and making money off Ukraine by forcing them to be indebted to Babylon the Great, which is America. And this is why you see this where it says Trump warns Russia of severe consequences if Putin doesn't agree to stop war. Because at this point, the job has been done. Ukraine has been decimated. As far as their male population, you can forget about it. And then they've successfully flushed out old inventory by lending it to the Ukrainians. They didn't give it away. The Ukrainians are under contract to pay back everything that's been given to them. And at the same time, the defense contractors get a new contract to make new weapons for Babylon the Great, which is America. So all of this is a gangster scheme of extortion, all right, and money laundering. What the so-called white man does on a global stage is what Jake does in small pockets of the world like Chirac. What Jake does against each other on blocks, the so-called white man is doing on a global scale. If you even think about the mafia, what they do, it's what the so-called white man is doing through his government on a global scale. And this is why the Lord said Esau would be the end of this age and Jacob would be the beginning of it that followeth. All right, because contrary to popular belief, we are heading into World War III. And as we know, all wars are banker wars, and the bankers benefit from these conflicts because they fund both sides. They can't lose. And the world is being set up for another war. But let's keep in mind, the Lord said it first. All right, this is Revelation chapter 11 and verse 14. The second woe is past, meaning World War II, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. And I'm pointing all of this out because, again, you have to go to the source of it, right? The source of it is that the Lord said that Esau would have a dominion, and his dominion would have to be maintained through violence. That you would be able to identify the wicked based on their actions in the earth. And that this is really going to be the war to end all wars. And we're literally watching the wicked in rulership, and the Lord is making these things known. See, the world is looking for one man to pop up out of the earth and be considered the Antichrist, while the so-called white man is doing everything globally that the Antichrist would do, according to prophecy. All right, it's 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and 3. Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God, or that is worship, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. And between the military might and the implementation of artificial intelligence, you're witnessing this mindset come to life. As much as people would like to think that the words that are being spoken, beginning with our apostles and elders, are from the minds of ignorant men, we're actually watching prophecy play out in real time. This is why the Lord said this in Matthew, the 16th chapter. All right, Matthew 16 and 1. The Pharisees also with the Sadducees came and tempting desired him that he would show them a sign from heaven. And he answered and said unto them, when it is evening, ye say, it will be fair weather, for the sky is red. And in the morning it will be foul weather today, for the sky is red and lowering. O ye hypocrites, ye can discern the face of the sky, but can ye not discern the signs of the times? And people take for granted that we're literally living in the time that the Lord spoke of from the days of old. Everything we're experiencing goes back to what the Lord said would happen. All right. And this is the power of prophecy. All right. This is Isaiah chapter 46 and verse 9. Remember the former things of old, for I am power and there is none else. I am power and there is none like me, declaring the end from the beginning, and from ancient times the things that are not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure. And we're living in the end of Esau's rulership. And you can see it plainly if you have eyes to see. You know, one thing that stuck out to me with both of those videos in particular, but the video dealing with the guns being the military grade guns being put in the hood. It shows you, right, that the same warfare that the so-called white man has been doing against you so-called Negroes right here in the home on his home front domestically, when you zoom out, he's doing that globally. And that's why I wanted to put both of those clips together, because it shows you it's all business as usual for him. And then they'll hop on these podiums and pretend like it has to be this way. That's not the reality. That's why the Lord said this is the end of an age and the beginning of it that followeth. When it talks about the end of the world, it's not talking about the actual end of the planet, because the scriptures say the earth abideth forever. It's talking about the age. Right now, we're in an age of vanity, violence, and intemperance. There's a reason the scriptures say in the kingdom of heaven, the nations will not learn war anymore, because the rulers are not going to be set up with the intent of greed and coveting fields and taking them by violence. And that is the MO of the so-called white man. All right, when you read this verse, I'm going to read it real quick. Who do you think of? Who does this fit concerning the planet and who's in rulership? This is Micah 2:1. Woe to them that devise iniquity and work evil upon their beds. When the morning is light, they practice it, because it is in the power of their hand. And they covet fields and take them by violence, and houses and take them away. So they oppress a man and his house, even a man and his heritage. And a perfect example, a very perfect current example, is what's going on in the state of Israel. You had Trump get on press conferences and talk about how Gaza should be a beachfront property. That's coveting a field and taking it by violence. And people go on and live their life on a day-to-day basis as if these things are not happening, but this is reality. And while people assume that it has to be this way, it doesn't. And that's why the kingdom of heaven is described as it that followeth, because the rulership of Yahweh Shai is going to be completely different from every rulership before it. So much so that the scriptures say the nations will not learn war anymore. You know, that's why I say, speaking as a man, this is the war to end all wars. This Isaiah chapter 2:4 says, and he shall judge among the nations and shall rebuke many people, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. That's the beauty of the kingdom of heaven. We read in Ecclesiastes, the 10th chapter, as the judge is, so is the people. And the judge is a violent man, to say the least. Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, the only thing if you really look at him as a whole, as a nation of people, the only thing they do well is violence. Lies as well. Lies are a close second, but nobody is as efficiently violent as the so-called white man. And now the son of perdition is being revealed, meaning he's not being called out as just an American and a Russian and a Frenchman no, he's being called out for his biblical nationality and, according to prophecy, what he would be doing in the last days. And now he's being revealed according to the Spirit of the Lord. All right. And these two clips in particular point out how wicked this man is. That blood is really nothing for him, and he's willing to spill blood to make $1. As if he doesn't have more than heart could wish, he's willing to spill more blood to increase his own wealth. And that is who is in rulership. This is who is in charge of the resources of the planet Earth. A man with this type of mentality. All right, this is 2 Thessalonians chapter 2:8. And then shall that wicked be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. And right now he's being consumed by the spirit of the Lord's mouth, beginning with our apostles and elders, who are the prophets. So he's being exposed, and this is a very important time in history, all right, because this is the end of an age of violence and intemperance. And this is the last rulership before the kingdom of heaven. But these things have to be brought to the light. That's why a part of the ministry isn't just telling our people that they're Israelites. It's also pointing out the son of perdition. This is the violent man. He's being exposed. All right. This is the man who's ruled the earth with anger, as the scriptures say. And now you're finding out from people who have been juiced into these circles that these guys are making money hand over fist through bloodshed. And you have to remember, the Ukrainians are Edomites. Those are so-called white people as well. They just speak a Slavic language, if you will. They're still so-called white people. And I'm bringing that point out to say, if they're willing to do that to their own to make a dollar, then who's safe, truly? And the reality is nobody's safe under the so-called white man's rulership. All right, this is Ecclesiastes 14:5. He that is evil to himself, to whom will he be good? He shall not take pleasure in his goods. There is none worse than he that envieth himself, and this is a recompense of his wickedness. So if he's willing to do this to his own people, all right, even when you deal with the conflict between Putin and Trump, these are two Edomite nations. All right, these are two nations of so-called white people. Make no mistake about it. Even though the Russians are looked at as the better option, they're still Edomites. All right, that's why the Lord said this in Ezekiel, the 37th chapter, Salaki, the 38th chapter. It's Ezekiel 38, and I'm going to just read the top. Ezekiel 38:1, and the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him, and say, Thus saith the Lord God, Behold, I am against thee, O Gog, and Salakia, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. So the Lord started off the prophecy concerning Russia, because this applies to Russia. All right, those Edomites that are Russians are living in the land that originally belonged to Gog and Magog, going into those Japhetic nations. All right. So the Lord is saying, look, I'm against you too. They're just a means to an end. They're a tool. And the Lord is bringing this conflict about as a war to end all wars. Because it says the third woe cometh quickly. You don't hear about a fourth woe. Because after this world war, after this age, if you will, after the Lord destroys this place, a new rulership will be instilled, which is the kingdom of heaven, the government of the Heavenly Father, ruled by his son, Yahweh Shai. And that's a rulership that will never end. And in that rulership, the nations will never learn war again. But the Lord is showing a very important lesson on the world stage, which is that the hypocrite's reign is but for a moment, and the consequences outweigh whatever reward you thought you got for being wicked. Matter of fact, let's go here. This is Job chapter 34:29. When he giveth quietness, who then can make trouble? And when he hideth his face, who then can behold him? Whether it be done against a nation or against a man only, that the hypocrite reign not, lest the people be ensnared. So the Lord is really setting everything up for a very public humiliation toward the so-called white man. His defeat, his fall from rulership is going to be public. That the people be not ensnared. Because right now the world hasn't seen the consequence of Esau, Edom, the so-called white man's. They haven't seen the judgment for his wicked rulership. That's why everybody's following after his lead, because they're seeing he's attained some kind of carnal success by being violent, by being deceitful. So the world is looking at it like, well, this must be the path to success. And all the nations in some way have adopted his ways to try and reach some form of success. And that's why the Lord said against a nation. Because if the Lord don't intervene, if the Lord don't step in, then the world will think this is okay. The world will think there's no consequence to this. The violent man is going to be put down, man. All right. And now the Wadi Habashim al-Shah, the truth is being revealed. All right. And the world is starting to see the so-called white man for who he is and not who he's pretended to be. All right. He's not a symbol of progress. He's a violent man that covers his hate with deceit. This is Isaiah chapter 14. And I'm going to jump down to verse 4. It says that thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon and say, how hath the oppressor ceased? The golden city ceased. The Lord hath broken the staff of the wicked and the scepter of the rulers. He who smote the people in wrath with a continual stroke. He that ruled the nations in anger is persecuted and none hindereth. All right, and this is describing the so-called white man's rulership. You know, and it's only until you zoom out through the spirit of the Lord that it becomes obvious. A lot of people don't zoom out enough because they have a comfortable life, a relatively comfortable life. So they don't look at the whole picture, so to speak. But when you zoom out, you see this is a world ruled by a man whose desire is as hell and is as death, who doesn't believe in equity, who doesn't believe in fairness. They believe in letting their strength be the law of justice. Matter of fact, this is Wisdom of Solomon 2:11. It says, I'll start at 10. Let us oppress the poor righteous man. Let us not spare the widow, nor reverence the ancient gray hairs of the age. Let our strength be the law of justice. For that which is feeble is found to be nothing worth. And that is their global policy. That is their international policy. Let strength be the law of justice. It ain't about right and wrong. And the state of Israel is a perfect example of that. All right. And this shows you through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shema Shah that we're in a very heavy time. Because as World War III is brewing up, truth is also being declared and it's being made plain who everyone is according to biblical prophecy. You know, you're witnessing the same tactics the so-called white man used against you Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans by putting weapons and division in your neighborhoods. He's doing that on a global scale. And now, especially in Babylon the Great, which is America, he's doing it against his own people, meaning the average so-called white people are now being persecuted as well. It may not be through ICE, but they're definitely being financially persecuted. The whole robbery of the middle class involves the rich so-called white people stealing from the middle and the poor. So all of this is prophecy coming to pass. And the Lord told us first. All right. And that's the blessing that we have as a nation of people, that the Lord revealed signs of the times. It's just 2/3 of our people refuse to hearken. This is Isaiah chapter 55:11. It says, so shall my word be that goeth forth out of my mouth. It shall not return unto me void, but it shall accomplish that which I please, and it shall prosper in the thing whereto I sent it. You have to remember, the world is just a stage. All right. These politicians think that they playing games, but we know through the spirit that behind closed doors, the elites are making money hand over fist on both sides of the conflicts. All right. They made money on the Ukraine versus Russia conflict, even though many people died in that process. And now they are brewing up World War III. Even though Iran hasn't been mentioned in the news lately, don't think it's just went away. Don't think these conflicts are just gone. It's just not being covered right now. As all of these changes in Babylon the Great, which is America, are starting to happen, they're not covering those conflicts, but they're still there. That's why the scriptures talk about wars and rumors of wars. All right, now let me jump down because I want to read the last paragraph of this, or the last few paragraphs. All right, it says, Fadiev also said Russia's stance on ending the war in Ukraine has not changed since Putin laid out his conditions last year. The full withdrawal of Ukrainian troops from parts of the Ukrainian regions of Donetsk, Zaporizhzhia, and Kherson that they still control, and Ukraine abandoning its plans to join the NATO alliance. Fadiev told reporters that the upcoming meeting between Putin and Trump in Alaska will allow the two leaders to focus on discussing all current issues between their countries, from the Ukraine war to the normalization of relations. Long-range strikes by Russia and Ukraine continued overnight into Wednesday. Ukraine's Air Force said Russia launched 49 drones and 2 North Korean-made ballistic missiles into the country overnight, of which 32 drones and both missiles were shot down or suppressed. Russia's defense ministry, meanwhile, said its forces shot down 63 Ukrainian drones overnight. So the battle is still heavy. They're still going back and forth. All right. And all of these talks, it may cause something to die down temporarily, but blood has already been shed. All right. And what the Ukrainian conflict showed was that Russia has allies. They're not a lone shark out here. All right. Not only do they have allies, but according to prophecy, they're a guard to other nations. Because even during the Ukrainian and Russian conflict, they still had time to give a certain assistance to the Iranians. And all of this will end up in World War III. All right. And this is how we know through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shema Shai that we're in a time of prophecy. Because not only is World War III on the cusp, but the son of perdition, all right, the so-called white man, is now showing his hand. We know at a certain point he's going to have to take his mask off. The whole pretending that he's innocent and he's just trying to do the right thing, eventually he's going to get rid of that facade. And that's the importance of the mark of the beast, which is the RFID microchip. Because if he can chip everybody and turn this system into a digital playground, so to speak, then he can decide who gets in and who doesn't. And at that point, he doesn't have to pretend. All right, so Lord willing, this was edifying with that. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who are the elders of Yasher Allah, and a sincere salutation to all Yuakim, who are preaching this word and believing this word, and to the Akwath, who are believing this word in all truth and in sincerity. Shalom.